All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of CMPAC Spotlight. And tonight we're going to take a look at some classic movies by talking with Mr. Scott Carter of Scotty's Drive-In Theater, seen right here on Access 21. So, Mr. Scotty, thank you.
Hey, good to be here.
Yes, okay, so I opened it up with talking about how we're going to go into the movie scene. That's what you're all about, right?
Yeah, it's Scotty's Drive-In Theater. It's your home for some of the best, but mostly some of the worst drive-in movies from way back in the days. And I'm Scotty, your minister of sinister cinema, here to guide you through the movie and assorted, what I call depraved fun and games, you will. Just different stuff I like to do, you know.
Yeah.
Just hopefully say funny things, hopefully.
Well, you know what? You sound like an opening of one of your segments, which is awesome. That's your brand. And I mean, I want to understand how you came to this point. What made you want to feature old movies?
Right. Well, I mean, you know, when I was growing up, my parents used to take us to the drive-in just about every Friday and Saturday night. And we always had a lot of fun. But I was also a real fan of The Late Show, the late movie. It used to come on back in the days on Friday and Saturday nights at Midnight Madness or, you know, Shock Theater. And I remember I used to watch a guy on Channel 36, and his name was Deadly Ernest. And this was back in the late 60s. And I thought that was so cool. And of course, you know, I love, you know, people like Elvira, and I watch Svengoolie on MeTV sometimes and stuff like that. So, but I really didn't want to be like a horror host. I just wanted to be kind of a regular guy. I mean, you know, just try to play myself with conviction, if that's possible. But I remember like watching The Late Show when I was a kid. I'd be parked in front of the TV with a peanut butter sandwich and a glass of milk, and we'd be watching, you know, Dr. Phibes or Plan 9 from Outer Space, or we used to watch it all the time. And every time when the end credits of the movie would come on, I'd look back and the old man would be passed out on the couch every time, and he worked hard though. But that was a real, you know, one of those experiences, you know, with my dad that I always enjoyed, you know, even though he used to fall asleep, I always used to enjoy doing that together.
Right.
And, you know, and of course, when I was able to, you know, got my driver's license, I used to love to go to the drive-in when I was a teenager in the 70s and 80s. And of course, I studied film and video in college and at UNCG. And after I got out of college, I worked in cable, and we had a local cable channel. This was called local origination, which is different than public access. But we operated both. And we had a local origination channel, and we had several movie programs on there. And I did pretty much a little bit of everything, from promotions to editing to master control. I used to put tapes in the machines and program them to run. But when I worked in cable, I learned a lot about like movie distribution and movie rights and acquisition, and what was copyrighted and what was public domain, and movie licensing, and I met a lot of people in the business back in those days over the phone, and I got to learn about, and that's how I really learned about the business of movie distribution. And so,
and it brought you to here. We're trying to do Scotty's Theater, huh?
That was a big part of it, because even on the cable channel, I had a movie program called Shock Theater. And after I left cable, I always wanted to do my own movie program, but I had to wait. Long story short, I had to wait until, because it's a really kind of a complicated process, you know, transferring the films and you know, adjusting the color and stuff, because a lot of old movies need color adjustment, and a lot of what we call grading and resolution. And so I had to wait until I had could buy my Macintosh, you know, and that was in 2002. And you know, I'd always kind of been a movie memorabilia guy too. I used to go to the movie theaters when I was a kid and beg posters from the manager, and he would take me into the office and open up a file cabinet just stuffed with posters, and he said, "Here, just take whatever you want."
Take
so
whatever
I
you
would
want.
just leave with handfuls involved, which a lot of them I still have, but.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so cool you mentioning all of this because I am a movie buff as well.
Oh,
I
great.
love TCM, Turner Classic Movies, for those of you who don't know.
Oh,
and yes, I love that. And then I worked at a movie theater on my summer break in college. And, you know, I was majoring in journalism, mass communications at the time, but I think being around that and then getting into film, you know, after college was awesome. So I can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the drive-ins are concerned, I haven't really been to a lot of drive-ins.
Never been to a drive-in?
I think I went to one. I can't tell you when that was, but I love hearing.
Well, you need to have the experience.
I do.
There's, I'll tell you that in the late 50s, there were about 4,000 drive-in theaters in the U.S.
Wow.
And today, there's probably maybe a couple of hundred in the whole country.
In the whole country.
And now, in Charlotte alone, you could look through a newspaper ad from the 70s, and there were like, I could name most of them. Now, there are probably a dozen drive-ins in the area. But today, there's, like, for example, the Baden Road Drive-In in Albemarle is only about an hour away, and they have 2 screens, and they show 2 movies on each screen. And we took the grandkids there. We taken the kids and the grandkids all there, and you can drive by there on Friday or Saturday night today, and the place is packed.
Wow.
Absolutely packed. So that would be, you know,
That'd
if
be
you want to
perfect.
get out and see a real drive-in, you know, that's would be a great choice.
Well, let me tell you, I was absolutely going to bring this up because we are in a time now with this pandemic that we've had to pivot from the way we used to look at movies. And even before the pandemic, we were able to see things on our home screens, you know, the small screen, but movies.
Right.
And if you chose to go out to the theater, of course, you can choose to do that. But now you have this, you know, you have this resurgence of drive-in theaters because of people needing to quarantine and social distance.
Oh, it's a natural thing during this pandemic because everybody's in their own car, you know, doing their own thing. But you're still getting together. It's still a community thing, and it's also, you know, like a lot of, you know, music shows were shut down during the pandemic, but they were doing those closed circuit TV concerts at places like drive-ins. And Baden Road did several of those, and they were packed.
Well, getting back to your show, because your show is doing double duty, even before the pandemic. You offered people an opportunity to have a drive-in feel, but they're at home.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you were able to do that. And when you talk about your teenage years and going to the theater, I saw on one of your programs where you talked about I think it was you and your cousin, y'all took the Thunderbird out and messed up the seats and all that stuff, threw up, spilled stuff.
Well, I don't think it quite went like that.
Well, what happened, Scotty? What happened?
Well, this was 1980, I think, and there was a Thunderbird drive-in on North Tryon Street. Matter of fact, there's a light rail station there on that site now.
Okay.
And me and a friend of mine went to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre when it was re-released in 1980, and I was in my dad's Monte Carlo. He was a 77 Monte Carlo.
Okay, not the Thunderbird, but the Monte Carlo.
No, I've been to Thunderbird in a Thunderbird before, but anyway, it was during one, like, you know, really scary part of the movie. You know, my friend accidentally opened the door to the car, and all the light came on in the car, and I was like, oh my God. Of course, that's not what I said. I said something different, but it was just like, you know, we were all like, you know, wrapped up in the movie because. That was the first time I'd seen that movie because my mom would not let me see it when it first came out.
Oh, well, I don't blame her. I mean, you know.
It's still one of my favorites, though. And that was one of the posters I got from the theater. I still have one of those original posters.
Okay.
That one. I've shown it on the show before.
Absolutely. Well, you talked about doing all this grading and being able to work with film and, kind of pull it into the here and now. What goes into that?
Well, it's kind of a complicated process, but it's really kind of simple. It's just very tedious.
Give
I
us
like
the
to,
short version of it, or the
I got
simplified
you. There
version
you go.
of it.
Well, I get a lot of movies that I buy. Everything is like stuff that I own, that I have the rights, theatrical and home, TV rights to and stuff. I don't go ripping stuff off of just any DVDs or anything like that, and which makes it a little kind of expensive. But anyway, I acquire, get like 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter movies from, different sources. And I have like a special projector that I can transfer it to video with. And then after that, the whole movie needs to have its brightness and contrast and color and mid-tone highlight and all that crap has to be adjusted. So it's just very tedious. I got like 3 machines that I use for the whole thing. Before
you air it on Access?
Yeah.
Or is that before you maybe look at it at home or have, friends over?
Right. Well, I got like one computer that I use for film transfer, and then another machine that's kind of a backup for that one. But I do everything on Mac Pro, and I use, after I transfer the movie, I use Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, all the stuff that we use here at Access 21.
Yeah.
And I also do all my computer graphics are done with Lightwave. I am a Lightwaver for life. And that's the same 3D program that was used on some like Star Trek movies, and it was first done on a program called Babylon 5 back in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty widely known, but I've been using that ever since the mid 90s, and still learning. Still learning on everything.
Well, technology is changing, and then when they decide to add something to what you already use, then you have to learn it. So that's good that you still stay teachable.
Well, I try to keep up. I was like, with my computers and the software that I use, I always say I usually stay about 5 or 10 years behind present day, but that's mostly a financial concern.
I understand, but you're making it work. Your graphics look great.
Thank you.
And you mentioned Star Trek. I was watching one of your uploads on our video on demand, and The Mysteries of the Gods with William Shatner. And I was like, man, I didn't know he did something like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That is awesome.
He did all kinds of he did a few obscure movies and stuff between the Star TV series and when the movies, when the Star Trek movies came out. But,
and I guess he may have gotten typecast because he was Captain Kirk. And
of course, well, he was perfect. Perfect to host a role like that.
Exactly.
And plus William Shatner, he's William Shatner.
Right. Well, now staying on that subject or that theme, do you do just sci-fi? Because I haven't watched all of your programs, but I've seen enough to know that your genre, your lane seems to be the sci-fi.
Well, I'm definitely a horror and sci-fi freak, but I do try to do on Scotty's Drive-In, do what I call genre films, which are like horror, science fiction, gangster, juvenile delinquent films. Like I've got the rights to some Ed Wood movies, and I've also recently got some Sword and Sandal films, Hercules movies. And those were pretty popular back in the days.
Hercules.
And very cheap too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Cheap to buy now or cheap to make?
No, well, no. Where I get the movies from, like a lot of the classic sci-fi titles, you don't want to know how much you pay for them. I mean, that's why a lot of movies that I want to show, I can't because they're just out of my range. But some movies like I recently did, what was it, The Triumph of Hercules from 1965, and that 16 millimeter print cost me $50.
Really?
Yep, and that's cheap. That's really cheap.
Yeah.
when, gosh, and it's getting to be Halloween. So last Halloween I saw like original Night of the Living Dead for like $1,500, you know, and I'm going, I can't do that because,
right.
See, that was the very first Scotty's Drive-In Theater was Night of the Living Dead, but I didn't pay $1,500 for that print. I paid like $250.
That's a lot still.
It was a bunch, yeah. And I hate I sold it, but it was. But you know, that's what I've done all through the years is I'll sell some movies and then buy other movies and you know that type thing. It's a racket like anything.
So and then you share them with everybody else because a lot of people they can't talk about having gone to the drive-in theater. You know, today's generation are probably just getting into theater or drive-in theater information or what have you, because of the pandemic.
Right. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, you know, the drive-in is for all generations. I mean, like I say, you go to out to the Baden Road or that place that's over in Gaston County. Can't remember the name of it right now,
well,
they're always packed.
Yeah.
And you know, but one reason is there's so few of them. But I mean, when I was growing up, like I say, when there were like a dozen drive-ins in the Charlotte area, they would all be absolutely packed.
Yeah.
I mean, crowded always.
You know, thinking right now how interesting it would be to talk about the history of the theater, the drive-in.
Yeah.
And how, you know, like everything, things change. I mean, going into just talking about how people used to grow their food, how people used to, you know, live off the land. And then when grocery stores became available, you know, the convenience of it all, or something new, then they went to that. I would think it's kind of like similar when it comes to theater.
That's a very good point, historical wise, because the first drive-ins, I think we're in New Jersey in the late 30s, but it was a very kind of experimental thing, like anything else when they first start out. But they became more popular after World War II. But the real explosion, like we alluded to earlier, was in the 50s because that was when there was a whole generation of teenagers that now had something called disposable income. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And of course, you know, the teenagers wanted to go out on dates and stuff, and so, you know, the drive-in, I need not mention, but the drive-in was a natural for teenage, you know, teenage dating and, you know, getting away, getting out of the house and, you know, somewhere you could go and make out with your girlfriend and watch a movie.
Well, now, Scotty, have you always lived in Charlotte?
I was born in Charlotte, but I was raised in New London, North Carolina.
New London?
Yeah, near Albemarle. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yep, in the foothills of the Uwharrie Mountains.
Okay, so when you came to Charlotte, things were different then, and you know, just the whole landscape was different, right? How do you think that plays into like some of the things that we're experiencing now?
Well, when I came to Charlotte, when I first got married in '88, when I worked in cable, I lived in Albemarle, but I worked in Charlotte.
Okay.
So I've been around Charlotte for a long time.
Okay.
And it's just not the same city that it used to be. I mean, it's exploded. It's massive growth in Charlotte. The way it was when I was growing up. I used to work for my dad, and all the delivering computer supplies and driving around in a van and stuff. And so I went to all old. I could go around and say, well, that used to be this, or that used to be that, or you know this. You know,
you could say what theater was where.
Exactly.
And not
I mean,
anymore.
Yeah, I can tell you all those places. So you know, I mean, and there's, you know, tried to preserve history, and I'm still glad like things like the Carolina Theater are still there, even though it's kind of, you know, not what it used to be, but they're at least trying to do something. I mean, you know, but it's. You know, that's just a lot of the change I've seen in Charlotte, and a lot of it's been for the better. I think I think it has. I think Charlotte's it's you know, some of it's for the good.
Yeah, well, you know, progress is good. We like progress, but you know, we also like talking about some history, good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh yeah.
You know, and movies do that.
Yeah.
Movies can do that. Documentaries can do that. You mentioned going around Charlotte and pointing out what used to be where. The job I told you about at the movie theater, that used to be at the Charlottetown movie theater, Regal.
Oh yeah.
Over there now where we have Target and you have that whole high-rise Petco, all that near the Greenway. And it's amazing what it looks like now.
Charlottetown Cinema.
Charlottetown Cinema.
That
exactly.
is where I saw, first time I saw Star Wars, Rocky, Airport this, Airport that. It's just everything. Because it was down the street from my grandmother's house. And
Okay.
so she used to live in Myers Park. So I would walk through Cherry neighborhood and go to the Charlottetown Mall. There was also another walk-in theater that disappeared years before that called the Center Theater, yet another Center Theater.
And where was this?
It was kind of over where that park is at the corner of Moorhead and Kings.
Oh,
it was
okay.
over there.
Okay.
That was an old neighborhood movie theater.
Wow.
And boy, that was a tore up old joint too.
Was it really? Even back in the day, huh?
Yeah, it was. It was another one I used to walk to from my grandmother's house, and the Charlotte. It was because the Charlottetown Cinema was like so new and everything, and that was because a lot of that, again, from a history standpoint, you know, a lot of the neighborhood theaters were in, you know, the uptown locations and stuff, and they were usually just one theater, and you know, of course, in the early '70s, you know, with malls and that's when the multiplex theaters, you know, first were introduced.
Yeah.
Where you get, you know, 2 cinemas, 3 cinemas.
Right.
And now over in Concord, it's what, 21,
Oh my
22
goodness. Yes.
cinemas.
So that's we talk about progress. We talk about the change. That was that change then, and then leading up to now. Yeah. But didn't you tell me that you have a documentary that is called Ghosts of
the Drive-In.
The Ghosts of the Drive-In.
Yeah,
That's kind of like history.
Well, yeah, that was something that I wanted to put together back in 2013, and that was a project that me and my friend Anya worked on together.
Right.
We did a bunch of road tripping to, and it was a good thing we did it at the time we did, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but this was about 2013, 2014, right? And so we drove to probably 15 different locations around North and South Carolina.
Wow.
And kind of just took the camera and just kind of, you know, explored what was left of the drive-in. And some of the locations, there really wasn't anything left except maybe some little pieces of concrete where the driveway used to be, or a little rock wall where the, you know, the entrance used to be, and some of them were, the whole place was littered with old speaker stands and you know, things like that. We saw a lot of speaker stands, a lot of old speaker pieces and things like that, you know, here and there, and it was, you know, it was kind of, you know, it was kind of a surreal. It was kind of, you know, yeah, it was kind of spooky.
Wow.
And so, Ghosts of the Drive-In. It was kind of, you know, in the crumbling ruins are still memories left alive. You know, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I'd like to see it, and I'm glad you mentioned.
You will.
All right. Very good. Well, we'll show some clips during this show as well. So, but I'm glad you mentioned Anya, because of course I knew Anya back whenever. It was Time Warner of cable at the time, and I was fresh out of college, but I was also had a job at the news station here. And whenever I would come here in Charlotte, when I would come to the public access station, Anya was always there doing her thing, had her signature long ponytail, and we talk about Anya fondly because she's now stepped into eternity, but she had a lot to do with this place, and I'm glad to hear that you all did that project together. Well,
it was a very, very, you know, fortunate thing that we got to do this, and when we did, and because like a lot of the places that we went to, like I say, today have been demolished, and so they were, you know, if we'd have done the project a couple of years later, it wouldn't have been anything to photograph. But Anya, I'm glad you bring her up. She was, as far as Access 21 history, we're talking about history here. She was a real pioneer in public access. She got started doing various music programs and arts programs back in the original Cablevision location on Monroe Road, I think it was, way back in the early 80s. And then she started Jim Duckworth and Friends Jazz Music Show with our dear friend Jim Duckworth, who has also departed this dimension. And he, as a matter of fact, it was Jimmy did the music for Ghost of the Drive-In.
Oh, did he?
So yeah, so that's a big part of the film. At least for me, it really makes a lot of the movie is the music, because it was very, very spooky, you know, very atmospheric. But
he was so talented.
He was one of the most talented guitarist that I've ever known personally, and he was a great guy. He could play anything. He was so versatile. He did the music theater. He did rock. He could play anything. But Anya, their relationship, and Jim Duckworth and Friends, and that whole era. I mean, that was just, you know, like I say, she was a real pioneer in public access back before public access was cool.
Well, yeah, before it was cool.
Yeah.
And I know she had some New York, like, you know, dealings.
She was, she was born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And as I'm glad you brought that up too, because having known Anya, for me personally, she gave me a sense of the world. She made me, you know, really come to understand that there was a big world out there, and that she was, because she was born in New York City, but her parents were from Germany, and they lived through World War II, and boy, those were some stories.
She
oh my
shared
goodness.
some with me.
Oh boy, now there would have been a documentary film. But yeah, she was, and we got to go I got to go to New York with her several times, and it became my favorite city in the whole world.
Wow.
And so, yeah, having known Anya really gave me a sense of, you know, the world out there. And even though I've never been west of the Mississippi, you know, I still feel like I've, you know, being with her, I've been to some of these places, you know.
Well, Scotty, that's such a good way to close out the program. I could talk to you more, just like I've had other guests. Well, you know, there's so much to unpack from you.
Sure.
And I thank you for coming.
You're more than welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for talking about Anya. And we'll just continue to look for your program, tune in, video on demand, right?
Sure, yep.
Okay.
You can catch like the latest 2 or 3 episodes on video on demand, access21.com.
Exactly. I certainly will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He already gave you the plug. He gave you the plug to look up Scotty's Drive-In Theater on tvaccess21.com, and there are a plethora of other programs that you can check out, and we want to keep it going, and we want to see you. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you the next time on CMPAC Spotlight.